Ulysses was published in 1922 and is considered to be Joyce's masterpiece. It's all set in Dublin on a single day, that is June the 16th and the beginning of the 17th, 1904, between 8 o'clock and 3 a.m. There are three main characters. One is a canvasser, a middle-aged salesman called Leopold Bloom. Then there is his wife, Molly Bloom, and an artist, an aspiring writer whose name is Stephen Dedalus. Stephen Dedalus was the protagonist of another book called A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. If we have to consider what the plot of Ulysses is, it's very hard to tell since it's set on a single day and not much happens. It's just the telling of a day in the life of this protagonist, Leopold Bloom, that after getting up starts walking around Dublin, and he encounters people along the way, even Stephen Dedalus, and they start making friends, and they visit a brothel. They get drunk, and in the end, Leopold goes back to his wife Molly. It's possible to follow the plot of Ulysses like a map, and it's quite realistic because Dublin is perfectly represented in all its streets and buildings. We can talk about a book dealing with traveling. These voyages are inside the consciousness of the protagonists, and there are associations of ideas, memories, and fantasy that trigger the wanderings of the mind. Then, what's the characteristic of Ulysses is that it's an imitation of Homer's Odyssey, and at the same time it's a parody. Because differently from the protagonist of the Odyssey, Ulysses, here there isn't a physical journey that is described, while only a psychological one. And even if there are parallelisms between the two books, we have to remember that Leopold is the opposite of the hero of the past. He is the anti-hero, the normal common man. It's divided into 18 episodes, modeled on those that we can find in Homer's text. Of course, they are kind of parody, heroes and anti-heroes. While the problems of the classical words were dealt with by heroes, and Ulysses is the example, here the problems, conflicts might be the same, but modern man is the opposite of a hero, is imperfect, and so he isn't helped by any gods. But what makes this work unique is the ordinariness of his characters, because there is a vitality that we cannot find in classical heroes. Also, the main characters are based on the Homeric model, and here they are described: hero and anti-hero. Odysseus, we know everything about him, that before going back to Ithaca, his homeland, is delayed because of a lot of adventures that he meets, and he is able to survive because of his wit. On the other hand, Bloom is a middle-aged Jewish, is an advertising canvasser, and they just goes out in the morning and wanders around Dublin, and in the end meets Stephen Dedalus and goes back to his wife. Telemachus is the son of Ulysses, waiting for his father's return, and he is badly treated by his mother's suitors. At the same time, he's also given good advice by King Nestor. Stephen Dedalus, on the contrary, is a young writer, a poor young writer, and he loses his temporary home because his companion sent him away. So now he's forced to wander the streets of Dublin looking for a new home, and together with that, a kind of substitute father. He only meets Bloom, that offers to take him into his house. Penelope is Ulysses' wife, and her feature is to be a faithful wife, waiting for her husband's return. And she's also famous because she avoids giving up to her suitors thanks to a weaving work that she never finishes because she unweaves it at night. Molly Bloom, that is Leopold Bloom's wife, is a singer, but her feature is having had a lot of lovers, and the wanderings of her mind are full of sensuous images, and in particular this is evident and present in Molly Bloom's stream of consciousness, that is the last part of the book. Of course, there are plenty of quotations taken from everywhere, Virgil, apart from Homer, of course, Virgil, Dante, Shakespeare, Vico, and so on. So we can call it more a modern epic than a novel, because it's an attempt to connect the past and the present, the classical world with the modern one, the harmony of the classical world with the fragmentation and despair of the modern one. Joyce uses very often interior monologues because it's the only way to simulate the working of the mind. Sometimes employing incomplete sentences. There are also a lot of slips of the tongue, sudden changes of tense, because time is a mixture of past, present, and future, as we have already studied. The connections sometimes are just those of free associations. Paradoxically, all this makes the book extremely realistic, because there is no selection of material. Material hasn't to be beautiful or harmonious or well balanced and organized. It's what life is, chaos, a collection of unrelated elements. But the structure is given by the symbolic system that he created, since he uses all techniques and styles in English, from Latin liturgy and Anglo-Saxon poetry to the language of popular magazines. And because of this, is also called an encyclopedic novel, similar to Sterne and Rabelais. To some people, it was considered obscene, immoral, incoherent, chaotic, obscure. These are all adjectives that have been attributed to this book because it's very hard to read. Some critics even compared it to a telephone directory. And of course, Joyce liked this nickname for his book very much. He appreciated it a lot. Why? Because it's not a book that needs to be read from the beginning to end. It can be read everywhere, and the reader is invited to understand and complete and interpret something that is complex to understand. It's more similar to taking part in a game.